Today's situation is particularly troubling, with 6 children going missing all at once. Let us get right into what happened to these children. The incident occurred in Pickering, Canada, which is just a half-hour drive from Toronto. It is the evening of March 16, 1995. It's late at night, and an apartment complex is beautifully illuminated. A group of youngsters were drinking and having a good time. The landlord, Chad, who was 18 at the time, Danny, who was 16, Jay, Jamie Michael, and Robbie, who was 17, were all hanging out. Oh, teenagers drinking, that's going to be so exciting, I feel like I've grown up, I thought. So we're having a nice time when suddenly Jay and Danny start arguing. As things heat up, Jay loses his cool and punches Danny in the face. And Danny is completely enraged. Then he dashes out of the flat to find his other companions. And he didn't return until well after midnight. On the 17th, it was 12:50 a.m. Because Danny left and did not return, the 5 of us who were waiting in the apartment became bored. And the other 5 decide that because they don't think he'll return, they'll go out to the docks and play. Danny returns to the apartment, a little calmer, after the kids go out to the pier. But no one is at home. Where did everyone go? Danny eventually exits the apartment to find the kids. It's approximately 1:30 p.m., 40 minutes after they arrived at the pier, and Jay calls his girlfriend, Monica, and says, "I'm going to take the kids water biking on a nearby lake." But it's 1:30 a.m., and Monica says it's too late at night, it's hazardous, and you shouldn't go. But Jay promises his girlfriend that everything is fine because he is with his pals. A call is received at the local police station around 2 hours later. Monica, Jay's girlfriend, answered the phone. She hadn't heard from him since he called to say he was going water biking, and she was concerned. The cops had not responded. Jay and his companions were delinquents who frequently drank alcohol and had a history of theft and violence. So the cops simply said to themselves, "Oh, they're out late again, and we can't reach them." So I advised Monica to contact Jay's parents directly if she was truly concerned. Tell them you'll take a case and make it seem insignificant. The police response was later called into question. The police did not release the initial report for a week. So, what happened to the kids? Did the cops tell you it was nothing? Everyone's worst nightmare came true. The next morning, there was no evidence of the 6 children. They were unable to be reached. They refused to return home. The families got so concerned that they reported their loved ones missing to the police one by one. On March 19th, there was still no word of the youngsters, so a police investigation was initiated. The investigators had made no progress by the conclusion of the 2 days. The officers began by searching the neighborhood, the lake, and the boat launch. The youngsters had mentioned riding their water bikes to the pier. They suspected there was a slight hint. Fortunately, the guy's actions was videotaped by an overhead surveillance camera. It was March 17, 1:48 a.m., and it showed 3 kids slipping into the marina. I could see their silhouettes despite the poor lighting. They were recognized as Jane, Robbie, and Michael by me. But the other kids were nowhere to be seen. Residents reported hearing a boat motor at 2 a.m. that night, and marina managers reported that a 4.2-meter boat had been stolen. The boat and a case of beer vanished. When you add it all up, it's possible that the youngsters stole the boat and the alcohol from the lake, drove away, got lost, and are now being kept captive somewhere. So we need to find them, and we've asked the local military and the Coast Guard for help. But it's not the ocean, it's a lake, and we're looking for people, and we have to contact the military and the Coast Guard, which seems a little excessive, don't you think? Actually, there's a reason we need all of this assistance. The lake where the children vanished is known as Ontario. It is one of the 5 largest lakes in the United States and Canada, larger than the majority of tiny countries. It is surrounded by the Canadian province of Ontario and the American state of New York, and it is so large that you can see the horizon. It has waves, rivers, and eventually drains into the Atlantic Ocean. Because it's a large lake, if someone goes missing here, it's a true emergency. The next day, March 20th, the police, Coast Guard, and military, who had been called in to assist, sent in planes. To begin the search, helicopters and maritime rescue teams were dispatched. Hundreds of individuals volunteered to look for the missing children. They searched the lake's shores. The hunt lasted 3 days. There was no trace of the kids anywhere. The military eventually left, and police and volunteers searched for another week. But they were nowhere to be seen. Then I noticed a water bike floating approximately 20 meters off the lake's edge. However, there was no proof that this was the bike the youngsters were riding. The cops determined it was pointless to look any further. The investigation was finally closed, with the police claiming that the kids had stolen the boat, were drinking and driving, and were murdered when the boat capsized owing to unskilled driving. The average March temperature in Ontario at the time was -0.9 degrees Celsius, with a low of -6.4 degrees Celsius. As a result, it was found that the youngsters died most likely of hypothermia. After 10 days, the investigation was concluded. The police's announcement that the boat had sunk, on the other hand, seemed odd. The first thing that struck me was the police attitude. They were already anticipating a sinking at the start of the investigation. They had hired an underwater detection business to look for them. However, for whatever reason, they cancelled that request shortly thereafter. Oh, and Lake Ontario is, of course, very deep. As a result, searching is a bit difficult. The typical depth is 86 meters. The deepest point is 244 meters deep. I mean, I understand it's not an easy search, but I believe it's unfortunate that they gave up without even attempting. The youngsters had been missing for 12 days. A red fuel canister was discovered on the shore of Wilson, on the other side of the lake, roughly 60 kilometers from the ship, on March 29. The gasoline canister's cover was missing upon inspection. The label was written in both English and French, as is customary in Canada. So I mailed the fuel canister to Canada, thinking it would be related to the missing Canadian teenager case from a while back. And I check it out, and it's absolutely the stolen boat fuel canister. But it's also really strange to consider. How exactly does fuel become separated from a boat? And, given the prevailing sea currents and winds, it was impossible for the gasoline canister to have been discovered on Wilson's shore. It was also unclear that a fuel canister without a cap would not sink for more than 2 weeks in the water. Water would enter through the cracks and sink if there was no cover. But there is only one possibility for this fuel canister to have been discovered in this condition. Someone purposefully removed the fuel canister and dumped it on Wilson's coast. The hunt goes on. Divers discovered an unopened bottle of beer in 3 meters of water in neighboring seas on March 30th. It was the identical beer that had been stolen during the absence. A forensic investigation of the beer bottle found several fingerprints, which might have come from either the right or left hand. However, it was never proven that they belonged to the lost children. The authorities received some surprising tips once the case was made public. Children have been spotted on the land. They were all in various locations, such as Q Beach in Toronto and a Burger King in New York City, and other individuals claim to have seen Chad, one of the missing children, at home the day after the incident. But these were always unsubstantiated reports. The survival reactions of the children were never confirmed. As a result, the family has come to terms with the prospect of an accident. They were, however, frustrated that all 6 of them had simply vanished, saying that it didn't make sense. Some speculated about the potential of another accident. The Pickering nuclear power plant, in fact, is just near to the marina where the youngsters were last seen. For cooling, the plant absorbs a large amount of seawater. We suspected that the youngsters were sucked into the intake by the boat at this moment. The water was literally spinning at a spot in front of the power plant. However, the facility insisted that no boats or people be permitted in the recreational system. So, where had the kids gone? 6 teens had vanished overnight. Without an investigation, time passed. And just when it appeared that the case had gone from people's consciousness, along came Bruce Lissett, a Canadian private investigator who had been investigating child disappearances for years. This was his theory. He stated that the alleged location of the missing children was between New York and Durham, Canada, which is known for its criminal drug activity. As a result, I suspected that the youngsters were participating in the drug trade. The marina's security cameras saw a pickup truck driving in after midnight on the day of the event. Then it was seen loading something into another car, stopping for approximately an hour, and then driving away. It's difficult to see, but this is the car that was hauling the load. That isn't everything. It was around 20 minutes after the kids boarded the ship, so it was around 2:10 a.m. Cameras captured a guy and 2 women heading inside the shipyard. What jumps out in this case is the actions of the man in front of them. He's just going along until suddenly raises his arm and gestures to something. People were curious if they had spotted the missing ID. If that's the case, we should try to find these folks and investigate. They could be the last eyewitness. However, they have yet to be recognized. Strangely, it is not the end of the story. The security cameras that cover the marina have not been triggered since 2:21 a.m. It's unclear whether the cameras stopped filming due to a glitch or if it was done on purpose. Time passed, and the case went cold. The body of a white guy was discovered in the Queenston section of the Niagara River in April 1998, 3 years after the children vanished. He stands between 5 and 5.5 feet tall. He was dressed in red Levi's pants, but his decomposition was so extreme that no further features could be identified. The jeans were identical to those worn by Jay, one of the missing children. Jay was about 6'2" tall at the time, so that's a reasonable guess. However, for some reason, the police did not conduct a DNA test on the body that was discovered. Jay's family was never informed of the body's finding. 5 more years passed, until 2003. Jay's family didn't find out till then. They requested that his DNA be compared to the body discovered in the Niagara River. The police response was unexpected. They claimed that the body was discovered further upstream than Lake Ontario, and that Jay, who vanished on Lake Ontario, could not have been discovered upstream. They also declined to conduct a DNA test, claiming that it would be too expensive. However, the family has not given up. They kept begging for the exam, stating they'd pay for everything. The police eventually sent the red pants and portions of the remains discovered in 1998 to the Ontario Coroner's Office, but the DNA test did not match Jay. The lads had been missing for 28 years. There is still no evidence of them, except for an object that is thought to be the boat's fuel tank. There was no wreckage or remains, and the police have finally concluded their investigation. Did they, as investigators determined, die of hypothermia after their boat capsized? Is there any chance they were involved in a crime? All of the missing people's genetic information has been registered with the National DNA Data Repository by their relatives. This was done so that any new remains discovered in Lake Ontario might be identified at any time. Every year on March 17, yellow balloons appear in the marina of the French Gulf. The yellow balloons commemorate the children with the hope that the missing children's families and friends will come together to console one another and hope that their children will be found. Even if it's too late, I hope their hearts are touched. Today's occurrence is also heartbreaking. I wonder if the cops could have reacted differently, if the search could have begun sooner. It's too late, but I hope the children can be reunited with their families soon.